Hi everybody. A lot of familiar faces, but some unknowns. So,
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming. All right. So, this is Anna, a software developer in the Volkswagen Software Development Center here in Lisbon. In the picture, practicing extreme programming in her favorite environment.
And he's Bruno, also software developer in SDC Lisbon, Volkswagen SDC Lisbon. And he's also practicing some extreme programming while skiing in the snow. Weird.
Yeah. And as you should have figured out by now, we are here to give you a talk about our Lord and Savior. About extreme programming.
Yeah, and it's not related with extreme sportings, neither working long hours without stopping and without breaks. Not like that.
The fact is that we both joined Volkswagen around a year ago, and we started practicing extreme programming when we joined. And since then, every time we said that we were doing extreme programming to our friends or to someone that we were talking about, everybody was full of questions, or even worse, full of misconceptions about what's extreme programming. So we got so tired of explaining it to every individual that we decided to do a talk to explain it to a broader audience, and then after that, we can talk about with a base knowledge and a base common ground.
Yeah, and if you have any doubts, reach us after the presentation.
Exactly.
We can see XP as Scrum, as Kanban, and they are both under an agile umbrella. And we can see Scrum and XP in some ways very similar. So Scrum has sprints, XP as iterations. Not so different. Yeah. In Scrum you have release plans, in XP epics, both has user stories.
But most importantly, in Scrum you have a fixed backlog. So you have a set of stories for a sprint, and no one during the sprint can touch those stories, while in extreme programming, our backlog is flexible. So a PM, if he needs to put another story in the backlog during an iteration, or if he needs to change the priorities of the stories, he talks to the devs, and he just do it, and this way we can adapt to changes. While in Scrum, if you do it like in pure terms, you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, and another difference is that XP recommends some engineering practice and Scrum doesn't. We have some sounds out there.
So, extreme programming is based on 5 core values: simplicity, feedback, respect, courage, and communication.
Yeah, the simplicity one basically is keep it simple. So start by doing the easier solution, the simple solution, and then iterate from it. Don't overcomplicate.
The feedback part is about collecting feedback from users and from stakeholders as soon as possible. If possible, even before starting developing the code with the prototypes and such. And so this way you can collect the feedback and feed it back to the loop of developing your product and doing what the users want.
The respect one, basically we work in a team, so we should respect each other, and everyone has the same values, so everyone should contribute to the team for the ideas, everything.
And the courage part is about always telling the truth. Do not make excuses about failures. Explain what happened. Be scientific. Explain when something goes wrong. And speak the truth to your stakeholders, to your colleagues, to everyone. But also, do not fear the no and embrace the change. We work as a team. If you don't know how something works, the team will solve it as a team. And this way, we are all stronger.
The communication one, I think it's one of the most important ones. And since we work in a team, we should really have a lot of communication. And from this value comes the balanced teams.
Yeah, the concept of the balanced teams is similar to a talk we watched this morning about product teams. And basically, it's the approach that we have at Volkswagen for building a product team. So the product team is composed only by 3 roles. designers, PMs, and engineers. And the PMs manage the product, not the people. So the PMs are responsible for the business side of a product. They talk to the stakeholders, they understand what's the goals for this product, and make sure that the product goes in the right way. The designers are not only people that know to draw pretty things or put the right button in the right place. They are people who incorporate the user, understand the user, his needs, his values, what he wants from the product, and make sure that the product goes in that direction. And then the engineers are responsible for the technological side. So they do everything from the pipeline to database to developing the code, testing, etc.
We can see, sorry, we can see this as a group of people with different skill sets, but all working together to achieve something in common, the product.
Exactly.
Techniques.
Yeah, so XP comes attached, as we said, XP comes attached with a bunch of techniques that help defining the environment and helps you develop a better product. And an important thing that you should remember is that you should start by following these techniques, but adapt them as your product and your project needs. So if something doesn't work for you, it's always okay to adapt and to evolve.
Starting by the planning, we are going to talk a little bit about scoping, Inception, epics, user stories, IPMs, let's see.
Yeah. So,
scoping. Basically, the scoping is a meeting that we have with the stakeholders, and basically we decide if we want and if we can do the product. And basically, the goal is to, if we go with the product, so it's a yes, then we need to figure it out what will be the approach and what will be the scope.
And the inception is the meeting that starts, really starts the work in a project, and should be done with the whole team that will work with in that project, and also with with all the stakeholders that are involved. So in this meeting, you start by collecting the goals, the risks, the mitigations for those risks, the assumptions that you have about the product, and if everything goes right, in the end, you'll come out with a set of goals mapped to epics, split it down to user stories, and you have a first backlog that you can start working on the next day.
An epic. An epic basically represents a feature, a goal, or a piece of functionality, which is mapped to a collection of stories.
Yeah, and the story represents the minimum amount of work that you can do to add value to a product. And normally it should be really explained in a way that everyone can understand the who, the what, and the why. So if you're wording a story, and if you use this example, if you go to your son you say, I want you to clean up your room, as your father, I want you to clean up your room, he will reply, so that. If you say, as your father, I want you to clean up your room so that I can enter it and not break anything, he understands he needs to clean at least what's on the floor.
IPMs, Iteration Planning Meeting. Well, it's a meeting where you plan your next iteration.
Thank you, Captain Obvious.
Basically, it's a weekly meeting where all the team gets together, and basically they discuss the functionalities that they have, each user story.
And we discuss the stories, organize them, prioritize them, point them, and we have what we will work during the next iteration. Another important part of doing XP is having the right work environment. From an open workspace to fixed working hours to stand-ups and retrospectives.
Basically, the fixed working hours has a reason. It's because we work all together, and even we work in pairs. So we need to be all in the same time at the office working, because if we need something, we should be there all together.
And the open space is exactly the same concept. You need to have your team, or it's easier to have your team working in one open space without boundaries, where anyone who needs help or has doubts about something can just turn the chair, call someone, and ask for help, and then continue his work instead of sending emails, using a chat, wherever, and waiting for responses and being blocked by minutes or hours in order to continue developing his work.
And even having, for example, a whiteboard there, so the team can just go there, draw some stuff, can discuss together. It's really helpful.
Yeah, and while open spaces have been in debate lately, and many people say, oh, I cannot concentrate, I cannot be in a open space working, it's really hard to develop my work in that way. You can have some pretty cool open spaces, like the one we have in Berlin, or the one we have here in Lisbon. But this one in Berlin, where we even had a car inside our open space, because a team was developing an app for connecting with a car, and they needed a car for testing.
Stand up. Basically, it's a daily meeting that we have within the team, and we use it to have the team all sync. Basically, it's where we say what we did the day before and what we are planning to do today. It's a good place to raise your hand if you have some problem, some blocker, if you need some help from the team.
Yeah, but the help part, you can ask it every time of the day. But yeah, if it's something really major, you should draw attention to it on a stand-up.
Retrospective.
Oh. So the retrospectives are another weekly meeting. So just as the IPM meeting, the iteration planning meeting, is the meeting that marks the start of our iteration, in our case, the start of our week. The retrospective marks the end of the iteration, and it's the place where you discuss what has been done, what went good, what went bad, and what went meh. So there are many ways of organizing a retrospective meeting, but the one that we use the most is exactly like that. We draw in a board a happy face, a sad face, and a meh face.
And then each member of the team just go there and write some topic in each column, and then there's a moderator which moderates the meeting, and everyone within the team discuss the topics there. And if we figure out that there's some needs for have some action items from that, then we'll write the action items, and someone from the team or even the entire team
will take action to fix what's bad.
Should take care of it.
Yeah. Moving into the technical part of XP, we should start by the main techniques for designing a solution.
Keys, spikes, functionalities only when needed, refactor often.
Yeah.
Keys, keep it simple and stupid. Probably most of you already know this one. So this is really related with the value, the simplicity one. And it's like, keep it really simple. Start by the smallest and simple solution, and then iterate from it. Don't overcomplicate it. And even because things change.
Yeah, things change really, really often. And so if you keep it simple and you focus on what's the most value, you are always sure that you're doing the right work and you're not spending time in something else that in the end can not be needed.
Spikes. Spikes is really important when you have no idea how to do something. And basically, imagine that you have some integration with a system that you have no idea how to do it. So basically, you can try out some stuff, you can code, and learn from it, and try to understand how it will work.
Exactly. And an important notion for the spikes is that after you learn, it's a learning process. It's something that a tool that you use to learn how to do something. But after learning what you needed, you should throw it away, literally, and then do the code, start with the tests, do the code properly, and apply your knowledge that you learn in the real world code.
Functionalities only when needed. Basically, this is related with the keys as well. So you should do the functionalities that were asked for, or if you really need it. Don't try to do another functionality just because you think, oh, maybe can I start doing this or that?
Yeah, or maybe this will be really important.
Yeah, but basically it's like Bruno said. there's a lot of things changing. So probably something that you think that you will need in the future, probably will not. So
Yeah, and some of you can be thinking like, yeah, right, my manager wants the world every time and every time for yesterday. What we are presenting here is a tool set that you can really use to achieve this point where you have your major functionalities for where you should focus. So you start from the scoping by really finding out what's the scope that's most valuable for the business. In the inception, you put the goals that are most valuable for the business and for the user first, and you prioritize them. And with this, you'll be finding your priorities that will be reflected in your backlog. And this way, you have really just you can split the product really by functionality and start with what importance. With what's most important. So, a good example. Imagine that you want to build a website that sells cars. If you focus on showing the cars to the user and having a button that when the user clicks, he thinks he's buying a car, but in reality, he's sending an email to someone that will then contact the user and finish the actual sale, you can test out if that website works, if the user wants it, how should you configure the site, how you should show the cars and whatever. If you focus on the part of selling the cars, having all the options presented and whatever, maybe in the end you'll find out that no one wants to buy a car online, but you lost a ton of time and money developing something that no one wants to use. So really focus on most user value for your product and start by that.
Refactor often. So if you have some time, refactor. If you don't have time, get some time to refactor. It's really important and helps to have your code concise, clean, and readable.
Yeah, and on the other hand, it pairs good with the clean your room analogy. If you clean your room every day, it's quite easy to do. If you do it every week, it's okay. If you do it once a month, it will take you an hour or so. If you do it once a year, you want to change home instead of cleaning, right? So keep your code clean and concise, and everything will be good.
Going into the coding part, CI/CD, trunk-based development, TDD, pair programming.
Bingo!
So many buzzwords.
Yeah. So CI/CD stands for continuous integration and continuous delivery. The continuous integration part implies that you commit often, you push every time you finish a task on your story, and that will trigger a build, run a set of tests, and deploy it in some environment. This way, you'll find out any problems that you didn't find in your development environment.
The continuous delivery part is regarding the deployment part. Yeah, the different deployments in the environment. The sandbox, the acceptance, production, and we have a bunch of end-to-end tests that they run in each environment.
Exactly.
And
this way, this will have your deploys without any or with almost any manual intervention. You can even pair this concept with the blue-green deployment concept. And with this, what this means is that you'll replace an instance of each instance of your services one by one and save a backup of the previous one that was running. And this way you can have a new version without having any downtime on one hand. And on the other hand, if you find out that something is not working as it should, you can just really quick replace what's running with the previous version, go back to the tests, find out why that functionality was not properly tested and so you had a problem, correct it, and deploy it again.
And in the screens you can see an example of one of our pipelines, and everything is green. And the boxes that you see represents the builds, the deploys, the tests. And if everything is green, everything is fine. If something is red, then you should take a look into it. Or you can just put a post-it and hide it.
Yeah, but the post-it part will be
Will not fix it.
discovered.
True.
Yeah. So, and a funny story about this pipeline, this is a complex pipeline that we have with more than 16 microservices in it. But if you commit codes and everything goes green, from development to sandbox, acceptance, and production goes less than an hour without any manual intervention.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
Trunk-based development, and doesn't mean developing a
on
trunk
trees.
or trees or something like that.
Trunk-based development is a concept that comes really attached with the CI/CD, and basically means that everyone is developing on master. You don't use branches. If you really need to use branches, of course, you will end up using that, but you make sure that they are shortly lived, and in the end, when they are not needed anymore, you either merge them back to master or you throw them away. And the reason for this is that it's much easier to have your pipeline starting to do stuff when you push if you only have one branch, instead of having all the magic or finding all the branches for all the features and all the deploys, and the continuous integration becomes a madness to solve.
And you avoid the hell of merging branches.
Yeah, that also.
TDD, test-driven development. So if you're not doing TDD, it's not extreme programming. And basically, it starts by writing a test and watch it fail. Then write just enough code to pass the test. And then improve the code without changing the behavior. One good tip to do this is in our user stories, we have the acceptance criteria. And if you start by writing the tests, taking into account that, it's a really good start.
Exactly.
Pair programming.
Just as TDD, just as extreme programming, whoops, just as extreme programming, there are many misconceptions about pair programming.
And it's not like that.
And in between these misconceptions, there are even people that think they did pair programming, but they didn't have the proper work environment for doing it.
And it's not like that as well. I have some colleagues that actually like to work like that, but no, not me at least.
So, for doing pair programming, you first need to have the right workspace. And this means having one computer, 2 monitors and mirror screen, 2 mice, 2 keyboards.
2 developers, 2 desks, 2 chairs.
And in the end, this means that you have 2 developers for every story that you have. Everybody is working in pairs. And has 2 brains think better than one. You'll end up to have a better solution for that story than if it was only one person developing it. Also, you many times end up delivering faster because they are helping each other and they are much more focused doing their work. And they are much less blocked by unknowns or by some bugs because they are the 2 concentrated, and if you don't know something, chances are that your pair knows how to do it, and so things work in a much faster way.
Yeah. There are many techniques to pair programming. We usually use 2. One is the driver and navigator, where one of the pair is coding and the other one is paying attention, is suggesting some improvements, and they discuss each other. And the other one is the ping pong. This one, basically, one of the pairs starts by writing the tests, the other one writes the codes, and then they switch.
Yeah. And these 2 tactics, the driver and navigator is really good when you have a gap of knowledge between the pairs, so either by technology or by business. So the one with more knowledge is it's driving, so he's typing everything. He's the one who controls the keyboard. And the other is paying attention and focusing what's being done and asking questions and suggesting improvements. The ping pong mode ends up being like a game. I write a test and try to make a test that makes Anna do the whole story at once and really properly implement it. And then Anna will implement the code trying to work around my test and showing me that I'm not testing properly this or that part.
Yeah. One important thing here is the communication, as we already talked before, because we really need to communicate each other. You can imagine, if you're working with pairs, you need really to communicate. Even sometimes you need just to think out loud, so they can help each other.
Yeah, and another important part is that pairs should change often, every day if the stories allow it. And this is not only to promote knowledge exchange and promote ownership between the teams, so you avoid that this or that pair has the ownership of that part of the code, but it's also to avoid that people grow tired of each other. Because if you pair for 3 months with the same person, you'll end up not wanting to see them again.
Not me.
Yeah, not me. And sometimes you can even pair with a bug sniffer that can help you find out the bugs that the last pair on the previous day left on the code.
Okay, but not everything is perfect. Some advantages and hardships.
Yeah. So we decided to show the advantages and hardships in a retrospective way, and not having the screen doesn't help. So starting for the bad part, for example, I really miss listening to music while coding, because it's obvious, right? I cannot have my headphones and be listening to music while talking to someone pairing.
I can sing for you.
Not the same thing, sorry. Another thing is that sometimes you just want to be alone. And for that, the answer is, well, suck it up. You'll have to do it. You'll have to pair. Or if you have a good environment and if you have some friendly colleagues, maybe you can just say, hey, dude, sorry, today I'm not here helping much. I had a bad night. So you'll have to do it all and ask for help when needed. But this is not the proper way of doing it. And on top of this, the most important bad part is that you have to hire for it. Many developers just like to be in their basement with their 5 monitors, listening to their music, and not be looking, what's happening with this? And not being bothered or not talk to anyone. While if you do pair programming, you need to like to be with people, you need to like to communicate, you need to like to be with persons.
True.
Yeah.
In the map part is, for example, the IDE preferences. So if you are used to some shortcuts or if you like your own preferences, here you can't have it because we basically have the stations all set up and you work in pairs, so you need to share the same preferences. Well, you can set it up and agree within the team which preferences you will use or the team will use. So it's not so bad. It's like, meh.
Yeah, but it's a way of, it's another thing that you need to communicate. If you have one that wants to use Vim, another one that wants to use Emacs, well, you'll have to make a decision between the team, which one to use.
In a good part, we have the live code review. Since there's 4 eyes looking to the code, we are always reviewing the code of each other.
Yeah, and why is this always going on and on?
I don't know. Some technical problems.
Nice.
Well,
Okay.
we have a faster ramp up and learning as well.
Another advantage is that you have a faster ramp up. So if you're starting on a product, if you're new to a team, in a normal environment or in a common environment, you have people reading documentation, looking at code and trying to understand, seeing diagrams of architecture and wherever, and being alone trying to understand what's happening there. How can I contribute to this project? In a pairing environment, you simply go there, your pair will explain you simply the architecture and what we are doing in that product, and after that, you're pairing, the other one is, your colleague is driving, you're navigating, paying attention, learning everything that you need to learn, asking questions, making suggestions of improvement, and you feel productive from day one.
So that's it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
Any questions? By the way, this is our office in Hato.
Yeah. Go ahead. Do you need mic? I need to give you my mic.
Hi. Thanks for the great presentation. I really enjoyed your dynamic in working as a pair.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the goal. That was the idea.
So I would like to know if you, how do you scale this beyond the team level? Do you have any experience on this?
Yes. I can use this. Yeah, I can use this microphone. No need for that. No worries. Yeah. For example, I was in Berlin for my ramp up while the Lisbon office was being built, and I was in a team that was considered to be too big because the project was growing, the product was growing, and had more and more and more developers, and in the end, it was a chaos to be organized. And what they did is split it in 3 logical separate teams that form a meta team, if you want to call it like this. So basically you end up splitting down in smaller teams, just as you do in epics and stories, you do it the same in teams. That's the solution we use.
But then how do those smaller teams coordinate between themselves? How do they do the stand-ups and all the...
They work, each team is, it's an individual team, but they know that we are collaborating in a major product. So most of the times the product managers align themselves and do some meetings to manage and see what needs to be built in each iteration and whatever. And that's it. And sometimes you can have some larger team events or do some retrospectives together or something like that. Because yeah, in the end, you may have some fights between the teams because I want to do it this way, they want to do it that way. It's just a matter of communication.
Communication.
And reaching a common ground. Yeah.
Hi. Well, I did some notes, but I will just pick 2 of those notes because I did a lot. You mentioned that you just making a retro in 1 week. It's not too short, like 1 week.
There's a lot of people asking that actually.
Because if you do a daily is a nice thing because you can share some rapid thoughts every day. That's a cool thing. But then in a week you do a retro is like.
You have a lot of stuff to...
Yeah. In our experience, doing stuff in pairs, a lot of stuff happens during 1 week. And it's incredible the amount of work that we can deliver during 1 week. And so our iterations are for 1 week, and that's why we do a weekly retro, because it's the end of our iteration. It's the same as in Scrum, you do your sprint review, and you have a retrospective about the sprint. But honestly, we feel that with this faster environment that we work in the end, 1 week is not too short. You have a lot to talk about, you have a lot to fix, and this way you also can tackle the problems that you have shortly, and so they are shortly lived, and so they don't become so big because you tackle them immediately. So yeah, 1 week is a good cadence.
Okay.
We tried doing, when we opened the office, on the first project, we tried to do a daily retro, and by the end of 1 week, we were all saying, no, this is too much, we are spending too much time. So a week is good.
Another question is, do you think that is relevant to have any definition of ready? Because everyone can pick everything and try to get involved with the story, but definition already is something that I did not heard.
It's mandatory. It's what we said, like having the test, having the acceptance criteria inside the story. It's a definition of ready. So it's exactly what we suggested by picking that and starting with the tests for that. It's exactly that. So every story needs to have the acceptance criteria or it's not ready, and in IPM will be rejected, and the PM needs to work in it again.
Any more questions? No.
We normally point 1, 2, 3. Okay. But it's just because everybody knows it's just a number.
Okay. Well, I'm just focusing on the extreme programming itself and not in your projects.
Yeah, true. But
Alright.
I think that's something that's shared with Scrum. So you should have the t-shirt sizes or poker pointing or whatever, but really just fixing it and knowing that a 0 pointer is really, really easier to do. One will be easy,
Okay.
2 more complex, and 3 maybe you can start considering splitting up.
Okay.
So regarding the working hours, you said it had to be at the same time, but from the pair that I did in the past, working in pairs is really intense. How do you manage that?
We have a lot of breaks.
A lot.
But it's like from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6,
We
and
for-
everyone needs to be at the same time. As you
For
were saying.
example, we have the breakfast at 8:30 during since 8:30 to 9, so we can guarantee that everyone go there to eat something. And then we have an office stand-up where everyone is there and we can talk about new faces, for example, if there's any interesting, if there's some help or offers that we need or some events coming up. And then every team should get together and then we do the daily stand-up. And like
this-
that, we can guarantee that all
Yeah.
are there.
And this is the start of our day. And then we do many, many breaks, really. And at 5:30 we just stop it, like do not touch more the keyboard, don't do anything else. Tomorrow it's another day, let's go.
And it's good because sometimes you have people that in another companies, for example, if you start earlier and then someone just arrive at 10 or 11 and then they just stay there for a longer time and you're like, should I go out or not? Should I stay? Should I go? Then here you don't have that problem. At 5:30 everyone is like, guys, 5:30, leave.
Let's go.
Yeah.
I don't care about your last bug.
Yeah, this
Fix
is
it tomorrow, let's
awesome.
go.
At the beginning, it was really, really strange. Sometimes you're just in the middle of something or you just broke something and it's like, I can keep this like this until tomorrow, no. Yeah, but sometimes it's like that.
Thank you.
What are the most unusual things? Like I saw in pictures a dog. Do you have any other things like that that are not really expected
We are
at
dog friendly.
workplace?
Actually, in our Berlin office, we sometimes have people that they just bring the dogs with them to the office. It's like they don't poo or something there.
Yeah.
They should go out. But if the dog behaves, that's okay.
And even in our office, we had that picture
Yeah.
was taken when one of our colleagues took his dogs to the office, and we were making fun of it. But yeah,
It
it's
was
just-
2 actually on that
Exactly.
day.
Yeah,
Yeah, another weird things, I don't know.
yeah. It's okay, but
Yeah, work with kids there, no, but you can show the office to your
Yeah.
kids.
taking the child to work. Currently, we don't have that. We didn't have that, but just because we are a young team, and actually we had a colleague that took his kid for an hour or so to the office. But it's just like any other office, right? It will be disrupting, and either you can entertain the kid some way and you can do your work, or someone will be permanently occupied by your kid. Live with it.
Yeah, you can leave it with the HR.
Oh,
That,
yeah.
That's the suggestion.
That's the suggestion.
That's the suggestion. They are happy about it.
I
Guys.
have a question. Do you know any example that can integrate remote work with pair programming?
Sorry?
Remote
Do you
work.
know any example that we can work in pair programming but with one of the resources in remote?
Actually, we tried that. We had one of us needed to go to the doctor, and the doctor was far away. He lives far away, and the doctor was in hometown. And we found out that actually you can. It's harder to take breaks, for example, because the other person is not in the same place as you. and you need to use headphones, and you use, for example, Visual Studio Code. It's really handy because it has multiple people editing the same file at the same time capability. It has that capability. So it somewhat works, but it's not the same thing. So our rule is, okay, we can deal with it if it's one-time shot, but we don't, if you go for an interview there, we will tell you there's no remote work. But we use common sense, of course.
No, it's like you can't go to the doctor.
Oh yeah.
Just go work. Pair. I'm joking.
Any more questions?
If anyone wants to go and visit our offices and ask some questions, just say something, go there. We are organizing some meetups as well, so you have the opportunity to know the office. We have an auditorium. That's up to you. Well, if you start working with us, maybe you should go with a pair. Any other question? Well, you can reach out.
Yeah.
Some of us will be here.
Just
Another
search for
question?
Yeah, you do pairing with programmers, and I know that you do pairing also with right?
Yeah.
You have cross-functionality teams.
Yes.
How you interact pairing with pairing when you have different disciplines? For
It's
example.
just you interrupt a pair and not one person. But
Okay, but
it's the same.
you don't see that it helps to have pairing with pairing, or it's the same? It doesn't-
Sorry,
Yeah.
If you interact a pair with another pair, completely different disciplines.
Interact.
Yes, you have cross-functionality teams, so
Yeah.
you have more interactions than different,
Yeah.
right? And you have a pair of designers and a pair of developers and a pair of other
PMs.
Yes.
So interacting pair with pair, it helps to improve the process, or it's the same?
In different roles, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We usually do that actually. For example, a developer can pair for one day or something with a designer, and then it will be faster maybe because sometimes when the designer is doing some stuff that needs some input from the developer, it's really helpful. And we have a lot of designers even pairing with the PMs. It's really helpful because they help each other and they have different capabilities. And actually, these balance teams is really helpful because each one has different responsibilities, but everyone are working for the same, and we help a lot each other because, yeah, exactly, different visions.
And when you have really small teams, imagine that you can have a team only with 2 pairs of developers. Normally you have 1 PM and 1 designer and they pair.
Yeah.
So the designer does his part and has the pair as a PM, as a pair doing inputs and asking questions and wherever, and the other way around,
Yeah.
even in writing stories. Most of the times, yes, because we work in pairs by default. But if you know, imagine that you have a spike in your backlog and someone is sick. Maybe the person alone will pick the spike and will do it, you know? But if it's really needed to do that spike and we are doing work in pairs, yes. But given that it's not production code, we don't need the 4i principle, so it's a great way of.
But
Yeah.
That can make pair harder because they can have different approaches on discovery. When you're developing production code, I think it's easier than when you're doing spikes. That's the question.
sometimes even what we do is, for example, if we need to search for something, for example, we can have a laptop, and for example, one of the pair is trying to search, and the other one as well, by himself, and then at the end, we can discuss our ideas, our findings, and then we can start developing from there.
Funny fact, many times you split up because you have different reading speeds, and I want the first link in Google and she wants the second link. So we split down, and when we reach a solution, someone says, hey, I found it, I know how to do it. And we share monitors, and many times we are on the same page. This happens many, many times. But yeah, searching for stuff and reading stuff, it's better to do it alone, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not developing software. I don't know very well this reality, but one question. For instance, in German, Volkswagen, they also do pair programming.
What? Sorry?
My question is, on another countries or on expensive countries, let's say, they also do pair programming, or is an advantage when when you have a team in a country like Portugal, where jobs are not so expensive?
Until now, almost all of us were in Berlin training.
Yeah.
Berlin is an expensive country, city in
Yeah,
this case.
I guess. Yeah.
So, and they do pair programming there.
Okay.
So, yeah, there are advantages. Of course, we cannot say that all the Volkswagen world is doing extreme programming or pair programming. That's not true.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not related with being expensive or cheap. It's related of having the advantages of having two people developing something as one and having two brains thinking on one problem.
Okay, thanks.
You have another one?
You can say. Oh no. We have no relation to that.
Anything else? Well, you can reach out,
Later.
yeah, if you want. Thank you.
Thank you.